Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Chris Morton is an operating partner at Orchid Black. Chris launches and accelerates the profitable growth of companies by creatively mapping technology to successful business models and market penetration strategies, leveraging industry partnerships, and securing institutional and strategic investment. Highlights for Chris include being the co-founder of Skycross, which sold over 750 million antennas and was later acquired by Airgain. Chris is also the co-founder of Mesh Networks, which was acquired by Motorola, and has also raised over $85 million in capital. Chris was awarded the GE Doctoral Fellowship and the Cade Prize for Company Innovation and Leadership. Community involvement for Chris includes being the former chairman and now advisory board for Grow Florida and a member of the executive committee of Orlando Tech Council. When it comes to business advice, Chris says know your strengths and limitations, be open to feedback and new ideas, and hire accordingly. Chris's bucket list includes traveling to Egypt, learning about the structure and uses of DNA from experts, and learning to play the electric guitar when he isn't playing the drums. Chris earned his PhD from the University of Pennsylvania in Communication Systems. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, and we have one of our friends back who's been on a number of times. He is smart, successful, insightful, and full of wisdom. Need I say more? So Chris, welcome back to the Deep Wealth Podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us. And Chris, for the benefit of our community, because since the last time that you're on, we are so fortunate. We continue to grow by leaps and bounds. Why don't you give us the story behind the story, Chris? What's your story? What got you to where you are today?
Sure, Jeffrey. Great to be back with you, by the way. And good morning or afternoon, everyone. I am currently, and I'll go in the opposite direction here, I'm currently a partner at Orchid Black, and we take positions in companies that are doing well, but could even be doing better. So we take financial positions and help them in terms of leadership, et cetera, and try to maximize their wealth, not unlike some of the discussions that Jeffrey and all of you have had over time. But prior to that, I was a serial entrepreneur and was the co-founder of an antenna company that sold about 650 million antennas into the smartphone market, a mesh networking company that ultimately got sold as well to Motorola that allowed signals and broadband communication to take alternate routes when failures occur. And nowadays, in addition to my role at Orchid Black, I sit on two of companies that I also have a stake in personally, one in the 5G space and one in the remote digital behavioral health world, which is fascinating and a story for a different time, but it keeps me on my toes. Again, great to be here.
Oh, Chris, great to have you. And you know what? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, half joking. I don't think you're busy enough, Chris. I think you need to be doing some more things. My goodness, you're doing a lot, which is great to hear. Now, I know this episode really the origins from this came right after we were wrapping up the last episode. And it was offline. We were talking and strategic partnerships and the strategy and everything else and why most companies get it wrong and what they can do to get it right. And we said, hey, why don't we put that into another episode? And here we are. What I love about you, Chris, and just really respect the insights that you bring. You've been in the corporate world with big corporate. You've also run your own companies. And as you just said, now you're on board. So really, you cover all the different gamuts out there in business. And I know, speaking for myself, as a business owner, if there's one area that has X's instead of check marks, that's the area of strategic partnerships. I never really hit that out of the park, could always have done better. And I suspect I'm not alone with that. What are you seeing out there, Chris? Because I know you speak to a lot of business owners, different businesses, different industries. But when it comes to strategic partnerships, are there some common themes, good or bad, that you're seeing?
Oh, there are. And before we get into it, I think it's important to talk about what we mean by strategic partnerships.
Sure.
Because everywhere in the literature, everywhere online, such as we are today, there's endless talk about partnerships. There's endless talk about strategies. But for me, strategic partnerships have a very specific and important meaning that can help companies grow, as you say, if done well. And the term that I'm using here comes from the fact that there are companies of various sizes that find either that they are in similar or dissimilar markets that one of them want to get into, have similar and overlapping, and therefore can combine forces of technology or products, or highly dissimilar ones where one can complement the other. And the other tee up here, I think, for the discussion will be an orientation to company size. So Jeffrey mentioned that I've started from scratch and taken out the trash, as it were, getting started and been on the other side of it in large companies. And there's something that both entities can often get out of strategic partnerships. And huge companies partner or have strategic partnerships with other huge companies. So the last filter I'll put on today's discussion will be one in which a smallish company, that is to say, a young company getting started or a mid-sized company hoping to grow and maximize their value and wealth in transferring it, is partnering with a far larger company that can benefit him in the ways that we're about to discuss.
Oh, terrific. I can't wait to hear that. And I'm sure the listeners are as well, because, you know, Chris, all too often you see the press release, and that's the most exciting part. After the press release, it's all downhill. So let's talk about what to do and also what not to do, which oftentimes is as important, maybe even more important than knowing what to do. So we'd love to hear that. So where would you like to start?
I'd like to start with the elements of a strategic partnership. Look at it from both sides, and in each element, talk about ways to do it wrong and right. And in fact, it'll echo back to one of our prior podcasts as well. So from the point of view of perhaps many of us listening today that have created or led our own companies to a certain size and are looking to maximize our return in the coming reasonable amount of time, whatever that is to you, there are 4 really interesting areas where a strategic partnership can be helpful. One is on the product side. It's often true that those of us that have to focus extremely narrowly in order to efficiently grow our company with products have niche markets today that are complementary to what the larger company that we may consider partnering with have. To us is credibility. The benefit to us is perhaps a channel for those products that the big partner may have. The benefit to us is perhaps trialing our product in larger labs with the big partnership and ensuring perhaps in a first office application with the products of a larger company that all is going to be fine and work well. The good thing about all that, I think, is self-evident. The hidden issue there is recognizing when you're dealing with a larger company, where in the march to general availability and repeatable performance, reliability, acceptability in whatever sense you want to talk about it, large companies can get attracted and enamored with smaller ones sometimes, and we'll talk more about culture in large companies and how they see it in a moment. But often when that happens, there is a disconnect when perhaps it's oversold, perhaps it's misinterpreted by your larger target partner. And they think that all is perfect when all is not perfect. And that doesn't mean there won't be interested if they can bring you along and be helpful in your march. But it actually isn't worth your time or ultimately their time if they think it's a prince and right now it's a frog, even though it may be on its way to being a prince.
Sure.
And so that's one important issue with respect to the product itself. From the larger company's point of view, looking at that same engagement, and this has been true now for a number of years, perhaps you even talked about it here with your friends, Jeffrey, they look at products or technology or even customers from smaller companies as complementary when it will take them too much time and money to develop it themselves. When they fear that if they don't work with you, one of their competitors will. And when they realize that technology can expand their bottom line in an impressive way in far shorter time than they could if they went it alone. And in fact, that harkens back to one of our prior podcasts on IP. Another reason for them to come your way is in partner. And I'm not talking about legally buying IP or your company. That's a different discussion for now. But come your way because if they tried it on their own, they would run into you anyway. So let's join forces. So product synchronization and understanding on both parties is really key. And as you point out, can be done well, can be done not so well.
Chris, let me ask you something before you continue with your insights and experience and your wisdom here. Because I know, speaking to a lot of business owners who are thinking about the prospects of working with a much larger company, you have concerns or, dare I say, fears that come up. How do I know they're not going to steal my IP? How do I know they're not going to raid my talent and once they get to know me, do all those things? Or, I work with them, give them the wherewithal, and now I'm really creating a future competitor. To those concerns, fact, fiction, thoughts and experiences on that, would love to hear that.
No, they're real. And I wish I could tell you that there was a magic wand to wave that would eliminate that possibility, Jeffrey. So the question then becomes, how do I choose a partner? What can I do to ensure that doesn't happen? Or as a judge for cases where I still fear it might happen, and then I don't pursue that particular partnership past a certain point. You mentioned IP. I'll get into that and harken back to something that we've said in the past, and that is that the world of IP is really useful if two things happen. One is, yes, patents for sure. The fear there, to be perfectly candid with everyone, if you haven't heard the prior podcast, is that they have a whole lot more lawyers and money than you. So if they wish to contest the fact and you think they've taken something from you, it's going to be difficult. But it's still necessary to file patents in the right countries, but not sufficient. The other is, how reverse engineerable is it? And there are all kinds of companies, and I'm sure entrepreneurs and business owners that listen here. And so if you are a first mover, perhaps in social networking software, that the technology of the software of which isn't necessarily unique, but the application is, and you've built a customer base that's impressive. And we all know the success stories at the mega level, but there are many others, I'm sure, for those that will listen to us here. You better think hard and long before getting a considerable loyal customer base before you do that. If, however, it's particular technology and products, as we've sort of alluded to so far, then it's important to make it as unreverse engineering, a near engineerable as possible, and then decide for yourself whether that's sufficient. I've given an example in the past where we were making antennas that people could find and look and make if they were bad actors, but sticking an antenna that's designed for one smartphone and yet another one won't work, it turns out, and I won't belabor why. Or in materials, high-tech nanomaterials, if you don't know the synthesis technique, just looking at the makeup of the material won't allow you to reconstruct it and have it perform well. So there are ways to do that. The idea of personnel is a harder one. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to sugarcoat that, but I will say this. If you have an exciting company and you have a core team that's well incented, and I'm including stock, and a real sense of participation, it's always true that those things are a barrier against people coming and cherry picking. And believe me, no one has to come up that close to you to be a potential strategic partner to understand who your best people are. That's going to happen anyway. I'm sure many of you listening know that.
Sure.
So that gets to a much broader issue of incenting and creating interest and respect and loyalty through participation.
So what I'm hearing you say, Chris, is the myths, or maybe they're not so much myths, the tales that we hear, there's truth to them, and it's really strategic partner, beware, and go in eyes wide open. Don't take anything for granted.
Yes. And remember, the larger strategic partner does not have to be a multi-billion-dollar company. Mm-hmm. It certainly doesn't have to exist in those, or rather be present in those parts of the world where it may be more common practice to steal. There are a whole range of partners that come together quite successfully. And PE firms and investment banking firms that I know that deal primarily with mid-market companies have a string of successes that are legitimate and long-lasting.
And Chris, I suppose if a smaller company is looking at partnering in a strategic way with a much larger company, diligence, speaking to current partners, former partners, just to get a sense of, hey, what's going on? Why are things working out? Why didn't it work out? Would be the way to go.
Right. And I realize again that each industry is different, but I think one common thing that I'll bet among the listeners, certainly true in my experience, is that in certain markets, in certain technological worlds, it's a fairly small world. That is to say that you've known people from conferences that may not be part of this deal, but you can call up and get some background information. Rest assured that the larger potential partner will do it on you, and they should, and so should you.
Got it. So it sounds like the good old 6 degrees of separation. Everyone knows somebody, and email, call,
yes,
net,
exactly.
We can pick up some things for diligence.
If it's a trusted person that has no stake in the deal, but wisdom in the markets or the companies involved, that's the perfect person to reach out to.
Terrific. Okay, so now that we cleared away some of the misconceptions or the realities of what's there, you've laid the foundation for that. Let's dig into some of the maybe lesser heard things out there or strategies that get you the success, because you've been on both sides of the equations here.
Sure. Let's talk for a minute, and we talked about it briefly, but the ways a strategic partner can work with the evolving younger company. Of course, we talked about product, and we chatted for a moment about how it looks from both sides, but there are others. One is that they may be an interesting strategic investor in a young company.
Interesting. Okay.
And this can be very interesting and good, and it can be a staggering mistake. So let me talk about both sides of an investment, rather. The good thing is that when investment typically occurs, you can tell by their interest that they have seen the value of what you have.
Okay.
That's important. You are likely to have been already working with them for a while, because the typical path between a larger and mid-sized company is one of which, let's start at the product level, get comfortable with each other, and then consider the possibility of doing more. And so those things are extremely valuable. Another valuable element from the point of view of a strategic investor is their investment objective is different to a degree than institutional investor. And I imagine you've covered this in the past, but by institutional ones, I mean traditional VCs who, while they may have subject matter experts, et cetera, are investing to maximize their profit, of course, and participate from a strongly financially driven point of view. The strategic investor in a large company is different in a couple of ways, and it's really important. One of them is that while they are to a degree held to account for the goodness of their investments, their objective is to get really embedded strategic partners, intimately connected strategic partners of value to the larger corporation. If I'm a large corporation and I have 9 pieces of the puzzle in a particular market worth billions, but I'm missing the 10th, it could well be very attractive not only to partner with a young company, but to move them along at a higher pace by investing in them. And so their objective is typically different. What happens most of the time in the larger company, and again, this is from looking at it from both sides, is that the strategic investment arm of this larger company is populated with people that may not be lifelong venture people, but they are business development and even very specific technologists who have a tour through the venture arm to add expertise and look for things that matter to them. So one of the things that's important to do is to early on find and work with a point of contact within the strategic investor, which can go back and find the right business unit within this perhaps mid-sized to mammoth company that would be interested, because the strategic investor won't actually do a deal with you in almost all cases if there's not strong support within the business units. And so there's an initial process here by which you've got to find a receptive partner within the venture firm. And that partner has to have a warm and fuzzy feeling by socializing what you do with the divisions that she or he will know or you can discuss with him. All of that will be generally good if the answers to those things are yes. The danger on the other side of this is not necessarily bad actors. We've covered that. But the danger is that this strategic partner, in my view, should not be one of a set of a relatively small competitors in a market that you want to sell to. That is to say, they have to have complementary products, yes, broadly speaking, in a market. Why would I say that? I would say that because if I take an investment from company X, and there's 4 other key companies that company X competes with,
right?
And that company invests in me and goes on my board, and they will certainly ask for that, at the very least as an observer, many times as an actual voting board member. The other competitors of big company X are going to believe there's a fox in the hen house. And no matter what you say about firewalls and other things, it will create doubt. Now that you might think at high level, well, then how would this ever work? Let me share a couple of examples just from my own past.
Please.
So I mentioned that we created a company that got quite big, actually, that made antennas for the wireless industry. It would have been a bad idea to take investment from one of the big smartphone manufacturers for the reason that I just said, and we didn't do that. It was a great idea to take investment from a couple of carriers that have all of the competitors, because I've gone around the competitive issue, but they in turn can put pressure on all phone or laptop providers to put our antennas in there. So there's a distinct difference. Along those same lines, if a strategic investor gets right of refusal upon the possibility of a success event of your company, that is to you're going to sell to someone, that also can effectively kill the deal. Why? Because you've probably sold your company for the amount of investment that company has already put in, because others know that if they get close to you and offer a bid and you have a first right of refusal in your agreement, they'll be used for a stalking horse. That is to say, it'll set a price for the strategic, or either they won't come close and near because they don't want to reveal themselves, or it will reduce the price because they'll only be a stalking horse, and why go through the effort? So there's really valuable things about strategic investment if it's part of a broader product market strategy. In other words, the thing that drives a strategic partnership. But there's a couple of pitfalls of the kind that I mentioned that are really almost company ending in a way. So plenty of ways to do it right, 2 ways to do it way not right.
And so, Chris, taking a step back here, because you've put a lot there that we could unpack, but
Sure.
one of the things that I'm hearing loud and clear is really, hey, play the long game. As tempting and perhaps even as easy as it would be to partner with someone who could also be a client or a customer of yours, don't do it. It'll long-term wise create more damage than good. You're also limiting yourself and opening yourself up for other issues along the way. Did I get that right?
Yeah, there's no strategic partnerships are not an end in themselves. Let me answer you this way, Jeffrey. They are a method to grow and hopefully create interest in your company and maximize your value and therefore your wealth. They are not the objective. They are a tool to do so when it makes sense. And so it's, yes, there's a longer term element to it, perhaps. There's certainly do your due diligence. And there's certainly an element of it of negotiate the deal in the right way. It's not to be feared, but you have to clearly understand what you're trying to achieve. If, for example, I have an interesting company and I have no access today to a particular market with my product. Why? Because it's just hard to enter. It's full of incumbents, but I have something unique. A strategic partner can be extremely valuable there because if I, and this is the nirvana of a strategic partnership, have the 10th piece, the missing piece that the big company doesn't have, I will get access to that big market that I can't in complement products of the big company. The big company doesn't have to wait to enter that market because they have a missing piece. And that's a situation in which it would work perfectly well. In fact, great. And we've talked about some cases where it would not.
And let me ask you this, Chris, as we're going through this, I mean, the big company that's going to be partnering with a smaller company, maybe even a startup.
Yeah.
From the smaller company perspective, we could just rhyme off all the reasons why this can help and why it makes sense. But I'm wondering, more times than not, we get the good old imposter syndrome coming up as a smaller company. And having been on both sides of the table here, Chris, from a larger company perspective, maybe you can reveal what they don't want the smaller company to know of why that smaller company makes a lot of sense. And outside the obvious one, because a big company maybe becomes slow and lethargic and the smaller company can really speed things up and make things interesting. When you get beyond that, though, what would be some little known things that the bigger companies don't necessarily want you to know, but they know very well, and that's why they're talking to you?
Yeah. And this is not to say anyone is a bad guy or nefarious either, right? Well, both sides are trying to maximize their value.
Exactly.
It's expected. The first thing to realize here is whether in fact it's a strategic partner or even an institutional investor or even an acquirer at any particular point in time. There is, but especially with institutional VCs and strategic ones, to our discussion here today, it is to their advantage because they see a wealth of people coming to their door to say, yeah, it looks interesting. Send me more. I'm not raising that because they're trying to take what I send. We've already gone down that thread.
Sure.
I'm raising it because you have to watch them appearing more interested than they may really be, because from the point of view of a big company, I want to be the one to say no.
Sure.
And that means, of course, that I want to sound positive. If it's really a horribly run company with bad technology, don't waste your time, says the big company, strategic investor. But within bounds, reasonable bounds of a competent company, you want to learn more so that you can be the one to judge. And one of the things that happens there is you're strung along, or you ultimately realize you were strung along because they will love to get more charts. They would love to see more about your financials. They would love a sample to test or two. If it's an existing product, they would want to put it through. And these hoops are giving them the opportunity, if it's a home run, to say yes, and lots of opportunity for them to say, hey, Chris, thanks. You're a little early, or it just doesn't fit our worldview of this market. Thanks so much. Good luck with that. So there is that. The other thing that's interesting is that from the point of view of a big company, especially the bigger of the big companies, we talked about larger strategic partners being far bigger perhaps than the other potential partner, but not necessarily mega companies. However, in mega companies that are worldwide with multiple divisions of 10 or 15,000 people per division, even a well-intended point of contact within a strategic venture arm of a company may or may not actually be able to easily or even correctly find the right place for this. And it may mean there is no right place, but it may also mean that they haven't found it yet. And it doesn't mean they're bozos, nor does it mean they're even acting disingenuously. It's not a trivial process. So one of the things for you entrepreneurs on the smaller side to think about is how best to arm this point of contact and get them looking in the areas of this large company, which will have a higher probability of bearing fruit. And therefore, just sort of, here's what we do and wait for a callback is not a good approach. We talked about getting G2 and what the other companies may do. Partly you may know that because you've approached this bigger company, or you, but work hard the whole time understanding it, because the point of contact of this big company may be perfectly well intended, as we said, but really not able to get at the right group. And that right group, depending upon the stage of maturity of our smaller company, may be their advanced development group. It may be pre-production, and various companies have various terms for this. Or it may be, we love your product, we just, we want to fold it in which case there's a decision to make to do that as well. It's a result of them judging the company and their product. What do I mean by judging? We talked about it when we first started on the product interaction side. Is this thing a breadboard in a laboratory, or is this a refined product with considerable testing, perhaps even a first office application? Who knows? But it's also their assessment of the smaller company. Are these individuals ready, if we take this, private label it, or tuck it under our arm in some intimate way and begin offering it to our customer base as that missing piece we've been talking about, will they, the younger company, be able to address problems? Or are they going to get a call back from the CEO? Well, Larry, the engineer, is on vacation. I can't help you because there's only one of them. And I'm overstating this for effect, but that's a huge issue. When our antenna company first sold to Samsung, I'll tell you a little story. A VP called me up and said, we love your technology. I want 1,000 of these by Tuesday, and hung up. Charming. And we worked basically nonstop. We took the 1,000 pieces in, and he was in the laboratory, and he threw them in the trash can. And I said, what did you do that for? He said, I wanted to see if you would.
Wow.
You're our kind of people. In other words, manically committed to serving them. Now, I'm not here to comment on their particular culture or whether one should do this all the time. But I am using this tale to convey the fact that their judgment of the degree of maturity, not just what you're offering specifically to them of the company, from the big company's point of view, is a big deal. And it will tell them, even if they like it, do I couple these people, I, Mr. Bigger Company, with the advanced research, advanced engineering, which is slightly more applied, all the way to, it's a product. We can sell it if we choose, or if we agree to do so.
And Chris, let me ask you, because you referenced this a little bit earlier, and it also came up in your story right now. I love that story, by the way, although I can't imagine what you and the team went through to jump through that hoop.
Yes, it was horrible. But they ultimately bought a couple of $100 million antennas from us.
So big picture wise, it was worth the many sleepless nights in that short period of time.
Exactly.
So a smaller company, they've identified a much larger company that could really help out on the distribution side, or whatever area that could be, or expanding the market. But they're not fortunate to get that phone call from the company, and they're now looking to call in cold to the company. So I imagine, Chris, if you didn't get that phone call and you identified Samsung or one of the other huge Goliaths out there,
Or people here, sure.
or people here, wherever it may be, but you identified a huge company, no one's calling you, where do you even begin to start finding the right person that can move the dial?
Great question. I'm glad you raised that. I hadn't planned to discuss it, and we should. There's typically two avenues. If the company is more or less in this hemisphere, or maybe Europe, the most effective thing you can do is to, and I'm not here to sell LinkedIn, but there's a variety of ways of determining organization structures. But you're not looking for their investment arm. You're looking for their business development arm. How would I find that? Again, if I don't know anyone who knows them, which is the first thing I would try, I would certainly enter through the business development side. And some of the larger companies even have designations of roles, which are maybe not strategic partnerships, but coupling in some manner, getting to market. They have very well realized that, by the way, all the big ones know very well that there are interesting companies that are coming along on a regular basis that can be helpful. That's part of our culture now. And so I would try the business development side. The other thing that I've done, which is not an endpoint, but a starting point, is if there is a local account rep or sales person, not a bad person to start with if you either have a rapport or can develop a rapport. I sit on the board and I'm an investor in one company right now that has a product that they, as well as I, believe could be very valuable to the wireless carrier in order to bring 5G to every building and every home.
Wow. There
is a local function here in Central Florida that for other reasons I had come to know. And it was able to have a conversation. Look, here's what these guys do. I think it would be valuable. Which leaf do we look under in a large carrier's corporate structure? How do we get approved to operate on their network? Where, if there was a strategic partnership possibility, should we look? And believe it or not, some of these folks are rightfully so much focused on selling, they may not know. But if you developed a good rapport, they'll find out for you, or they found out from past experience. But funding is a result of what looks like a good partnership. Go to business development.
Well, some great tips there. Start with business development, or if you can't get a way in the door there, perhaps a sales rep or someone in the sales channel.
Yeah, especially sales. Yeah, the reps possibly, but they're even further from the core of the company. But yes, that's
good distinction.
That's right. And then look, it's about relationships and building them.
Sure.
Just to complete the thought, Jeffrey. Engaging with the business development guy and just coming out in a very straightforward manner. And saying, look, we think we have something special here. Who do I need to talk to? And by the way, happy to show it to you as well, but help me here.
Yeah, I like that. And so let me ask you this, and I suspect the answer is going to be good old-fashioned doing your homework and diligence and the right kind of presentation, but you get your foot in the door. You now have that opportunity, and I can just imagine, and Chris, perhaps you've been there yourself in the larger company. You probably get pitches all the time that it becomes deafening, and seeing the real deal from the ones that are just a waste of time and effort can become difficult. Any insights or tips of, you get the right contact, you have your one shot, how you're going to make it count to make that favorable impression?
I think two things. Sure, homework and diligence, but there's other things to be said here. From the small company's point of view, you may or may not, when you start, be all the way to the right people. So realize that, and this is often the case, right? There's 6 levels of the onion to peel, and it takes time and obviously energy. But realize that there are certain important things that the person is going to react positively to in your talk. And I'm not here to do chartsmanship, et cetera.
Sure.
But let me bounce to the other side. So you and I are now not the ultimate decider. The biz dev guy at headquarters in wherever, these team of people or set of founders come and speak to you, or remotely or otherwise. So you have to realize that they'll be impressed by 3 or 4 important things. How that translates to a particular business and charts is certainly not for our discussion today.
Sure.
Number one, that they really understand the markets that they're trying to get at. Number two, that they have something that they believe is differentiable and others do too. It could be just trials. It could be whatever points of convincing or others have tried it and like it, you can give to the big company, the more impressed they will be. Another is tone. The first guy in business development doesn't need 38 charts. It needs somebody to come in and tell me, look, this is what we have. This is where we believe it's going to add considerable value. This is the fact that others have seen this and they're either already using it or already trialing it. And by the way, parenthetically, you better get on the train before it leaves. Yeah. So the point of markets, sure, they can disagree with details, but it's the management team that knows who they are, knows where they're going, knows what they've got, and conveys that succinctly is the key, not only in the first line of defense, but as you make your way in. Because the first entry point is simply to create credibility. That first entry point is not to give them the 29th chart on, and by the way, here's the grim details of our 5-year business plan. It is not. And you can tell by my voice, I have a strong bias there.
Sure.
But I've listened to them and I've given them. And it is one of the most common mistakes, and it spans every market that are made. You want the person to leave on the big company side and say, look, this team has it going on. They're sharp people. They know what they've got. They know where they're headed. They think they have at least some interesting idea about where they might connect with us. I don't mean in detail, but how we might couple together. Let me go find the right person if I haven't already and put some energy behind it.
Yeah, wow. So some terrific insights. They're really not too different from both business and personal. I mean, to take it to the extreme, Chris, and I'm going to take it way out there on the personal side.
Yeah.
You know, on the romantic side, if you meet someone who's of interest, the very first time you meet that person, you're not asking that person to marry you or to put all your baggage on the table. You're trying to make your best first impression, to have an interest of, hey, let's continue the conversation. And
the people that have a sense of themselves or a sense of their team and where they fit and what they want out of life or is what people most fundamentally react to.
And Chris, being on the other side now, when companies have approached you to work with them and you've been really the Titan of business or the Goliath out there, I suppose it's much like when I speak to buyers who are looking at buying a company and they say, Jeffrey, if we get even the smallest indication of fear or the business owner being desperate, that's like sharks in the water, blood in the water. We're going to go in and really take that to the fullest advantage that we can. And I suppose in this context, when you're approaching the larger company, there needs to be confidence and brevity and the big picture, not desperation and all the negative attributes that go along with it.
And it partly harkens back to the conversation we just had, Jeffrey. But remember, too, that each interaction in a particular company has a purpose. So we've talked about, hello, here we are, in that interaction. There's a number of ways as you get deeper, if there's interest on the part of the big company, to convey your interest and willingness to be flexible, but also the fact that you know your worth. And it's hard to generalize those in a podcast such as this, but there are ways, and they'll start probably, if not with the first meeting, with those that begin to follow, that you know what you're talking about and you know what you have. And if you don't, you may not get an offer at all to partner. And if you do, it'll be, yes, sign here. And by the way, I get right of first refusal. Lucky you, I'm going to pay you some money.
And Chris, I suppose when speaking to, if we're on the smaller side, speaking to the larger company, really it's no different than why we started our companies in the first place. I mean, with your antenna company, Chris, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm going to make a big assumption. You can tell me if I'm on base or off base. You found a very specific problem, a painful problem in the marketplace, and you found a world-class way to solve it. And so taking that forward, when we're looking at partnering in a strategic partnership way with larger companies, take the time, do the research, do whatever you need to do. Hey, what's their problem, a painful problem for them that you are the world's best resource to solve for them. I suspect that will get anyone's interest when done right.
It will. The other thing that it does, and I didn't say it quite that way in the prior, but that kind of knowledge going in, even if it's not exactly right, if well done, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. We all know that.
Sure.
But knowing where, at least to some degree of accuracy, the pain points are that you can help solve provides a sense of confidence to the leadership team in engaging. It's not, oh, please help me find where in this behemoth I might fit, please, sir. I call it begging at the back door.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to be caught begging at the back door.
Yeah.
But knowledge of the industry, obviously knowledge of what you have to offer and knowledge of what that particular target partner may have provides confidence. If you've seen this, I know, and I'll bet you listening to this later will recognize this. Public speaking at a conference.
Sure.
The most confident people are people that know they know what they want to convey.
Yeah.
Now, sure, there are people that are more or less comfortable on a stage with 500 people in front of them. But the knowledge of the fact that you have something good to share is such a huge differentiator. And the people that are sweating bullets and wetting through their business shirt 10 minutes before going on may be competent people, don't get me wrong, but you have to convince yourself and remind yourself, I guess, that you know.
Exactly. And Chris, I've been on both sides, including the sweating shirt 10 minutes before the presentation. And so I speak from experience, and the difference is really, and this is one of our foundational beliefs and values at Deep Wealth, it's just preparation. When you've put the time in, you've prepared, you've practiced again, and you've practiced some more, that's when you can do it in your sleep. It becomes second nature. And that's where the confidence just exudes from you and it attracts others.
One other thing to share on this subject of not only confidence, but effective communication or presentation is realize that for most of your audience, whether it's a conference or even a particular set of people sitting around the table as you're making your pitch, when that used to happen, right, Jeffrey, as opposed to Zoom, they assume that they are intelligent people. Because they likely are, but they don't know what you know. So, and they don't need to know everything. That reinforces the idea of logical progression of the talk. Here's the pain, here's the product, here's how large an opportunity, here's others that have seen it. That sort of logic, smart people that don't know particularly what you're talking about will react positively to that every time. I do, I can tell you. It's the key. And keep it moving along. Most people that I have spoken with in that context are smart and they're somewhat visual. You want to see the progression of the structure of what you're talking about almost all the time. I'll share that as well.
I know all this stuff, but when it's happening to me, I just get caught up with it. And it's only afterwards, look, it's the human condition.
It is.
As smart as we think we are and as polished and experienced as we think we are, in the right environment, with the right kind of techniques and preparation and strategy, game on, and anything is possible.
Exactly.
And so, Chris, let me ask you this, because truthfully, I could go down a zillion rabbit holes with you and would love to. That said, though, we're starting to bump up against some time, and you've been very gracious in the past because we have a tradition here at Deep Wealth. As you know, every guest, we ask the same question and would love to continue that tradition. So that said, let me remind you of the question, and you've had a few kicks at the can, but let's see where you come out on this one. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. We're about to find out. That's what makes it all fun. So as you recall, you have that magical DeLorean car in the movie Back to the Future, and the car takes you to any point in time. So Chris, here's the fun part. It's tomorrow morning, you look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car sitting there, but the door is open, waiting for you to hop on in. So you hop in and you can now go to any point in your younger days when you're perhaps a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time that's going to be. What are you telling your younger self of, hey, Chris, here's some life wisdom or lessons, or do this, but don't do that? What would it sound like?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two answers because I'm going to remind you And perhaps those that may have heard one of our podcasts together before, I've answered as, I would have, as a young researcher, probably realized my love was in creating companies and matching technology to market. But that's not the answer I'm going to give today. The answer I'm going to give today would be even a younger self. Yeah. One of the things that I've had to learn over time is to lead with empathy.
Wow.
And I wasn't leading anybody when I was even younger than starting out my professional career. But I had this idea that if I was smart enough and dynamic enough, it would all be fine. What I've learned, and therefore I'd love to go back and teach myself, is that one of the chief ways to get people with you and behind you is to realize, hey, we're working hard. We're all people. We all make mistakes. Of course, you can't continue to employ people that are really failing at it. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the act of encouraging, the act of saying, hey, believe me, I've been through that too. How can I help you? All of that sort of thing, which I've found over time I'm really good at, but I didn't think it mattered when I was young and starting. I think that's the lesson that I'll share today.
What I love about that is really you're taking what was already within you, but perhaps not as valued at that time, like you're saying it is today.
Right.
And again, this is on I'll call it the art side of business that we tend to overlook, or even the art side of life, quite openly, something that doesn't take any more time. It doesn't cost any additional money or resources, but the impact that it makes is huge. And what a wonderful reminder for us, Chris, as we wrap this up, to put that out there. And I really thank you for that.
Sure, my pleasure.
That said, it's official. This is a wrap. And as we like to say here at Deep Wealth, Chris, please continue to thrive and prosper and stay healthy and safe. Really appreciate your insights and wisdom today. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Jeffrey. To those of you that will listen down the road, good luck to each and every one of you.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
It was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe it's going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.